All right, so let's dive into something that's been in the news lately and something that I know is keeping a lot of healthcare professionals up at night,
Hmm.
drug shortages here in the US.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about empty shelves at the pharmacy, but like really seriously thinking about the real world consequences for patients when they need critical medications and sometimes even life-saving medications.
You definitely give me a lot to work with here. Congressional testimonies, research papers, a white paper,
Oh, yeah.
and even some YouTube insights from the American Hospital Association and the Council on Foreign Relations.
Yeah.
Um, it's a lot to unpack, but I think it's crucial that we see this issue, from multiple angles.
Absolutely. And I'm already noticing a theme here. This isn't just a simple supply chain hiccup, right? It feels like there are some real systemic issues that are at play here. So, to start off, can you give us a sense of just how widespread these shortages actually are?
Yeah, I mean, you've probably seen the headlines, drug shortages are at a 5-year high. But the real kicker here is that it's not just obscure medications, right? It's not just some super rare thing that only a few people need. It's essential medications that, people need for everyday healthcare needs. And we're even seeing those critical life-saving treatments that are sending patients and their families into a frenzy. That's the real issue here.
I read a story about parents that were desperately searching for medications for their children who have pediatric cancer,
Right.
and it's just unacceptable that that's happening.
Yeah, it really is. And, that's just one example. Think about the fact that 1 in 4 prescriptions filled in the last 26 months, 1 in 4, were from companies that had open FDA warning letters.
Oh, wow. Okay, wait, back up a second. Open FDA warning letters, what does that even mean?
Basically, it means that the FDA found significant violations at a manufacturing facility. And these violations could compromise the quality of the drugs they're producing. When you think about the fact that there's this link between these warning letters and the pressure to cut costs, companies are trying to do things as cheaply as possible.
Sure.
Well, it raises some serious concerns about patient safety.
So it's not just about if the drug is available, but is it safe?
Yeah,
And that just adds a whole other layer of complexity to this problem.
exactly. And it puts healthcare providers in such a tough spot. I mean, they're often forced to make do with substitute therapies. They have to delay procedures.
Wow.
And sometimes they even have to compromise the quality of care. And that can have a domino effect, right? I mean, it can lead to patient harm or, in the worst cases, even death.
Okay, so this is starting to feel pretty bleak. It's like we're trying to untangle this giant knot and it just keeps getting more and more tangled as we go. So let's try to get down to the root causes here. What are the key factors that are contributing to these shortages?
Well, one of the biggest ones is our heavy reliance on foreign manufacturers. I mean, a staggering 85% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients and 60% of finished drug doses come from overseas.
So essentially, we are outsourcing a huge chunk of our drug production. I can see how that would make us extremely vulnerable to disruptions like, say, a global pandemic.
Precisely. We saw what happened during COVID, right? Supply chains were completely thrown into chaos. But even without a pandemic, I mean, we are really at the mercy of so many external factors, geopolitical tensions, natural disasters, export restrictions from, another country.
Oh, yeah.
All of these things can have this huge ripple effect on our drug supply here in the U.S.
The Council on Foreign Relations video, I felt like that really hammered that point home, didn't it? It's
Hmm.
not just about inconvenience. We're
Right.
talking about life-saving medications.
Yeah, and it really highlights this fundamental vulnerability in our healthcare system.
Mm.
We can't rely solely on these foreign manufacturers, especially when it comes to medications that are considered essential.
Okay, so foreign reliance is obviously a major issue. What else is kind of fueling these shortages?
Well, you can't really talk about drug shortages without addressing the economics of generic drugs.
Mhm.
Most shortages involve generics, which are uh, less profitable for the manufacturers to make than brand name drugs.
But doesn't that seem kind of counterintuitive that generics, which are meant to be more affordable, are actually less profitable to produce? How does that even make
It
sense?
is kind of ironic, actually. So group purchasing organizations, or GPOs as they're called, were created to make the pharmaceutical market more efficient, right? But in some ways, they've actually contributed to the problem.
Okay, I'm going to need you to break that down for me.
Okay, so GPOs, they negotiate drug prices on behalf of hospitals and healthcare systems.
Okay.
And in theory, this is great, right? Lower prices for everyone. But here's the catch. They often drive the prices down so low that it actually becomes unprofitable for U.S. manufacturers to compete.
So they're being squeezed out of the market.
Yeah.
And that, in turn, makes us even more reliant on those foreign manufacturers who can produce the drugs at a lower cost, but sometimes at the expense of quality.
Exactly. The congressional testimonies really highlighted that tension, and they painted this really stark picture of U.S. manufacturers that are facing this impossible choice. Either they shut down or they cut corners to stay afloat.
Wow.
Or they continue operating with significant risks, and that's how they end up with those FDA warning letters that we talked about before.
It's a classic catch-22. We need affordable generics, but the pressure to keep those prices low can actually undermine the quality and the availability of those very drugs.
So we've got foreign reliance, the complex economics of generics. Is there anything else that is adding to this perfect storm of shortages? Well, there's one more player that we really need to address, the FDA. And, they play this critical role in managing these shortages, but their hands are often tied.
The testimonies touched on that too, I remember. So what are some of the biggest challenges that they face?
Well, the FDA can't actually force companies to produce drugs or dictate their business decisions. Even when it comes to essential medicines, they lack that authority. So imagine you're sitting there, you see this looming shortage, and you can't really do anything about it.
Oh, wow.
Pretty frustrating.
Well, so they can't just wave a magic wand and make the shortages disappear?
Unfortunately not. And on top of that, they face these significant hurdles when it comes to inspecting the foreign drug manufacturing facilities.
Yeah.
It's just, in terms of timeliness, it's really a big issue.
Right, because those warning letters are, a huge red flag. And, limited oversight of foreign facilities means we don't always know or can guarantee the quality of the drugs coming into the country.
And there's one more piece of the puzzle here that's often missing, and that is data. The FDA doesn't always have this clear picture of demand surges, which makes it really difficult for them to anticipate and proactively address shortages before they even hit.
So it's a reactive system, always playing catch up while patients are left, scrambling.
Right.
Not exactly a recipe for success.
Definitely creates a lot of unnecessary stress and uncertainty for everyone.
So we've got foreign reliance, we've got the tricky economics of generics, and we've got the FDA's limited reach. And these are all kind of tangled up together to create this massive drug shortage crisis.
A crisis, and it's important to remember, with very real human consequences.
Yeah.
I mean, these aren't just abstract numbers that we're dealing with. This is people's health, their well-being, their very lives hanging in the balance.
Yeah, that's a sobering thought. But we got to move beyond just understanding the problem, right? What are the potential solutions here? The sources must offer some hope.
They absolutely do. There are some promising ideas on the table, though I'll be honest with you, none of them are quick fixes.
Well, as long as there are paths forward, let's hear them. Especially if it means, preventing even one more family from hearing those awful words. We don't have the drug you need.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So first up, data transparency. Imagine a system where we actually have real-time information on demand fluctuations, supply chain vulnerabilities, and production capacity.
That sounds like a game changer. Better data means better forecasting and hopefully fewer surprises down the line. Did any of the sources offer specific examples of how this kind of data sharing could work in practice?
Yeah, one of the research papers talked about creating a centralized database where manufacturers, distributors, and healthcare providers could all share information about their inventory levels, production schedules, and potential disruptions. Think of it like an early warning system for drug shortages.
So instead of operating in silos, everyone's got the shared view of the situation, and then they can, anticipate and mitigate potential shortages.
Exactly. And it's not even just about reacting to problems.
Right.
It's about being proactive. With better data, we could identify vulnerabilities in the supply chain and take steps to address them before they even become full-blown crises.
Okay. So data transparency is a crucial piece of the puzzle. What else is on the table?
Well, several experts argued for incentivizing domestic manufacturing.
Yeah.
Essentially bringing drug production back to the U.S.
Okay. That sounds good in theory, but wouldn't bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. increase drug prices?
Yeah.
I mean, we're always battling that trade-off between affordability and, producing things here.
It's a valid concern. It's not an insurmountable obstacle, though.
Okay.
One of the YouTube videos from the American Hospital Association really
Right.
highlighted the potential of advanced manufacturing technologies, or AMTs, to address this very issue. So imagine, like, 3D printing personalized doses of a cancer drug right here in the U.S.,
Wow.
potentially even reducing costs and wait times.
3D printing medication. That sounds like something out of a science fiction movie. Is that really a viable option right now?
It's closer than you think.
Okay.
AMTs encompass a range of different technologies, including, robotics, artificial intelligence, and yes, even 3D printing. The idea is to create this more efficient and flexible manufacturing process so we can actually respond very quickly to changes in demand
Okay.
and even customize medications for individual patients.
Oh, so we could produce higher quality drugs domestically at a competitive price and even tailor them to specific needs. That's pretty remarkable. But realistically, how much of an impact could these AMTs actually have on the current shortage crisis?
It's still early days, but the potential is enormous. And we don't have to just speculate. There's a fascinating case study mentioned in one of the sources. The API Innovation Center in Missouri has combined AMTs and state funding to bring production of some critical cancer drugs back to the U.S.
Oh, wow.
It's a promising model for how we can rebuild domestic manufacturing capacity in a way that's both innovative and cost-effective.
Okay, now we're talking. That's a concrete example of how innovation can actually help us address this, very complex challenge. So we've got data transparency. We've got investing in these AMTs to boost domestic production. What else is on this list of potential solutions?
Well, streamlining the regulatory process at the FDA would make a huge difference.
You mean cutting through all that red tape?
Yes,
Cool.
but strategically.
Yeah.
We can't just throw open the doors and sacrifice quality for speed, right?
All right.
For example, if we could speed up approvals for new manufacturing facilities that meet these very rigorous safety standards, we could boost production more quickly. And of course, expanding the FDA's resources for foreign inspections. That would go a long way in ensuring the quality of the drugs coming from overseas.
It's about finding that balance between safety and efficiency, right?
Exactly.
But how do we balance, the need for speed with the absolute necessity of making sure those drugs are safe?
Yeah, it's a delicate dance, no doubt. But there are examples of how it can be done effectively.
Okay.
One of the congressional testimonies discussed the use of priority review pathways for essential medications.
Okay.
This allows the FDA to expedite the approval process without, compromising safety standards.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot of talk about leveraging new technologies like artificial intelligence to, analyze data, identify potential risks more efficiently.
So using technology not just to produce drugs, but to actually regulate them more effectively. I like that. Anything else we should consider?
This one might be a bit controversial, but several experts are calling for a fundamental shift in how we approach the generic drug market.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
Remember how we talked about GPOs pushing prices down to those unsustainable levels?
Yeah.
Some are suggesting we rethink their role, perhaps incentivizing quality over rock-bottom prices.
Okay.
What if, instead of always opting for the cheapest option, we rewarded companies that produce higher quality generics, even if they come at a slightly higher price tag?
So shift the focus from bargain hunting to prioritizing quality and sustainability. That makes a lot of sense, especially in a field as critical as healthcare.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that make those generics less accessible to the people who really need them most?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. It would require careful consideration, perhaps some creative solutions. Maybe we could explore tiered pricing models.
Okay.
Where those who can afford to pay a bit more for higher quality generics,
Mhm.
help subsidize the cost for those who can't.
Yeah.
It's about finding a way to create a more sustainable market that benefits both manufacturers and patients.
It sounds like we're talking about like a paradigm shift, in how we actually value generic medications. We're not just buying a commodity. We're investing in people's health and well-being.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective is crucial if we really want to create this more resilient and equitable healthcare system.
Okay, so we've got a roadmap here of potential solutions. Data transparency, AMTs, regulatory reform, and changing the incentives in the generic drug market. It's a lot to take in, but I'm starting to see like a path forward here.
Yeah, me too. It's not a hopeless situation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a complex issue, and it won't be solved overnight.
Yeah.
But the key takeaway here is that there are things we can do. We have the knowledge, the technology, the resources to build a much more resilient pharmaceutical supply chain here in the U.S.
And in doing so, we can ensure that everyone, I mean, from children battling cancer to adults managing those chronic conditions, has access to the, life-saving medications they need when they need them. No more frantic searches, no more agonizing choices, between quality and affordability,
Yeah.
just reliable access to safe and effective drugs.
That's the goal. And these sources have really shown us that it is achievable.
Yeah.
It'll take commitment and collaboration, but it's a fight worth fighting.
I love that. It's this powerful reminder that even in the face of, these daunting challenges, we can find solutions, especially when we're willing to, learn from experts, consider different perspectives, and work together towards a common goal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about big sweeping changes at the policy level.
Right.
There are things that individuals can do as well.
Like what? Give us some concrete steps.
Well, for starters, just being aware of the problem is huge. Talk to your healthcare provider, learn about the medications you're taking, and don't be afraid to, ask questions. Ask about the sourcing. Ask about the availability.
That's a great point. Don't be afraid to be your own advocate. What else can listeners do to, make a difference here?
Support those working to make a difference. There are organizations like Angels for Change.
Okay.
They advocate for patients. They're working to raise awareness about drug shortages. They even have a resource that helps connect patients with available medication when they're, facing a shortage.
Angels for Change. Wasn't their founder, Laura Bray, featured in one of the congressional testimonies?
Yes. She shared her own really harrowing experience trying to find medication for her daughter who was battling leukemia.
Yeah.
It was a powerful reminder that, this crisis has a very real human cost.
It's easy to get, lost in the statistics, the policy discussions, but it's stories like Laura's that really, bring the issue home and remind us why we need to keep fighting for change. So we got a call to action here. Get informed, get involved, and support those working to make a difference. What other resources can listeners tap into?
The USP Medicine Supply Map.
Okay.
It's a great online tool. It actually shows you which medications are in short supply in your community. It really brings the issue home, shows you how it might be affecting your friends, your family, even yourself. It also helps connect patients with healthcare providers who have the medication they need.
So this isn't just some abstract issue that's happening in Washington. It's impacting, real people in our own backyards.
Exactly. It's about connecting the dots, understanding the scope of the problem, and then, taking action.
This deep dive has certainly given me a lot to think about, but I'm also left with a question that wasn't directly addressed in any of the sources. We saw during the pandemic how quickly we can mobilize resources and expertise when faced with this, really urgent health crisis.
Yeah.
Operation Warp Speed was a remarkable example of scientific innovation and collaboration.
Absolutely.
So if we can expedite vaccine development during a global pandemic, can we apply those same lessons to tackling this chronic problem of drug shortages?
Yeah, it really makes you think, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we can develop life-saving vaccines in record time during a global pandemic, shouldn't we be able to apply that same level of focus and urgency to, this crisis that's been plaguing our healthcare system for years?
Well, I think it comes down to a couple of things. First,
Yeah.
we need to really acknowledge how serious this problem is. During the pandemic, there was this clear and present danger,
Right.
and that really galvanized action. We need to treat drug shortages with that same level of seriousness.
It's like you said earlier, shifting our mindset. Stop looking at this as a side issue, but see it as a national priority. Exactly. And the second thing is we need a similar level of collaboration and innovation. I mean, Operation Warp Speed brought together government agencies, private companies, researchers, healthcare providers in this really unprecedented way.
Yeah, it was a remarkable feat of coordination and ingenuity. Do you think we could replicate that kind of collaborative spirit in tackling drug shortages?
I don't see why not. But it brings me to another point that wasn't explicitly addressed in the sources, but it kept coming up for me as I was, going through everything.
Okay.
The issue of trust.
Oh, interesting. How does trust play into this?
Well, there seems to be this real lack of trust in the pharmaceutical industry
Mm-hmm.
and even in the regulatory bodies that are, tasked with overseeing it. I mean, years of rising drug prices,
Yeah.
questionable marketing practices, even instances of outright fraud. I mean, this has really eroded public confidence.
So how do we rebuild that trust? Because without it, any attempts at collaboration are gonna be really tough.
Transparency is key.
Okay.
The more open and honest the pharmaceutical industry is about its practices, its pricing models, its supply chain vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
the more likely it is to regain that public trust.
It's about showing people they're putting patients first, not just profits.
Right. And it's also about accountability.
Mm.
When mistakes are made, they need to be acknowledged and addressed, swiftly and sincerely.
Yeah, and it can't just be lip service, right? There
Right.
needs to be like real action taken to, prevent these mistakes from happening again.
Absolutely. And that's where, patient advocacy groups like Angels for Change can play such a crucial role.
Yeah.
They can bridge the gap between patients and the industry, amplify their voices,
Mhm.
and hold those in power, accountable.
It's about working together, right? Creating this system that's truly patient-centered,
Hmm.
where access to safe and effective medication isn't a privilege, it's a right.
That's a powerful vision and one that resonates with everyone who's been touched by this crisis.
This deep dive has been a real journey. We started by talking about, that very real fear and uncertainty that drug shortages create.
Yeah.
And we've ended on this, hopeful but also challenging note of collaboration and systemic change.
It's been a really fascinating exploration of a complex issue.
Mm-hmm.
And while the sources didn't, provide all the answers, they gave us, a solid framework for understanding the problem and, identifying potential solutions.
I think that's the beauty of the deep dive, right? It's not about, spoon-feeding answers.
Sure.
It's about sparking curiosity, encouraging, critical thinking, and really empowering our listeners to kind of dig deeper on their own.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
So to our listener out there, we leave you with this. What resonated most with you during this deep dive? What insights surprised you? And, most importantly, what actions, big or small, are you going to take to be a part of the solution?
Because as we learned today, this isn't just a problem for policymakers and industry leaders to solve.
Right.
It's a challenge that demands the attention and action of all of us.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.